Welcome to my channel. I'm Double Six. This is Money, Cars, Women and Children. On my channel, I discuss how to keep men more deadly and more dangerous. This is part of my Black Families Matter series of episodes where I discuss a complex children's case that I had to fight against the system and local government to try to regain back access to my children after a long-standing relationship came to an end. Stay tuned to the flip side where I discuss now early years help assessments that I got from Lambeth Council and the early years help assessment that sunk my ship in the early days of my case. Stay tuned to the other side, all right? So welcome back. Like I said, this is part of my Black Families Matters episodes, and this is episode 6 if I'm keeping count correctly this time. But what's key is in my last episode, I spoke about the police, how to deal with the police, how to navigate police, how when you're getting nicked, how to stay away from your ex and do all of that kind of jazz. But prior to that, the previous episode before that, I was talking about how I went to family court and I lost contact with my children, and I lost contact with my children because the system had a whole heap of documentation that was already completed behind my back prior to me going to court. So when I went to court, I was like some idiot walking up into the court. The judge held up a letter and said, I have in my hands this early years help assessment document. What's this all about? I knew nothing what it was about. The Cashapp officer had a copy of the early years help assessment and said basically that they are not agreeing to father having any contact with the children based on the contents of the early years help assessment. I had no idea what this document was, never seen it, didn't know nothing about it. So looking back in retrospect, and when I get disclosure and full disclosure of all the case paperwork, I got the early years help assessment. And prior to this episode, when I lost contact with my children, it was a pretty low day in my life, pretty low day. And that's when I said, rah, this is war. That's when I said, this is war. Not war against the children's mum, war against the system, because it was the lawyer, Robert Tresman from Staple in Chambers in London. He was the wicked that was destroying the family. It was the handbag lady judge. She wasn't a judge, handbag magistrate. She didn't give a monkeys about black family. And the Cashapp officer was just sitting there with her laptop, basically reading the early years help assessment. And she didn't give a monkeys about keeping a black family together. And certainly Lambeth Council were not interested in keeping a black family together. So the system surrounded my children's mother and fed her the negativity that she needed to basically continue to drive a wedge between a black father and his black sons. So I actually got hold of the document and I'm going to bring it to you to the table now. Now this is an early years help assessment, and it was created by Lambeth Council because my children were under the jurisdiction of Lambeth Social Services. And if you look at, I've just numbered the sections so I don't have to keep driving to pointers on the screen. So just at the top where it says CSC EH assessment, I've labeled number 1 just there beside ID. Now the document reference that this social worker put in there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So clearly they don't have no proper document referencing system at Lambeth Council. Why they would just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a document reference, because that's no reference at all. The gender of the children was male, and you can see at item number 2, the gender, the ethnicity was Black British, right? Now, the social worker that conducted this early years help assessment behind my back, basically before I even went to my first court hearing, so with the child's mum, was Vivienne Neary. She qualified in 2016 as a social worker. At the time this was written was 2018, right? So she is or was a social worker at Lambeth Council. So just scrolling down, this tells you the documentation, what it's about. It's a general health and development, physical development, behavior, social development, looks at difficulties, social relationships, substance misuse, education, learning and employment, progress, participation. Basically, they're in your business now. This is when the son's mum now invites these people into your business. They're digging in the weeds. They're looking at all the details about your family life, right? So that's what this assessment is supposed to do. Now, I've had to heavily redact the document, right? So I was going through just the main document that I've numbered them in sections. You can start to see that I have numbered just the sections here, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've gone through just to kind of point you to the parts that I want to talk about in this early years help assessment. So we started from the beginning that it was Vivienne Neary, the social worker. I'm just going to keep exposing Vivienne Neary and her poor social working skills. We come down and it basically starts to say that the children are in good health, where they live in a 2-bed place, in a suburb, in a local authority, yada, yada, yada. But pay attention now to section 5, where they start to really get into your business. That says son, that had my son's name, that was my eldest son. And they start to detail now, son 1 has thrown furniture and other objects at staff and other children at school and hurt them and does not take responsibility for his actions. Now, you've got to ask yourself, if your son is hurting people and doesn't take responsibility for their actions, that's a parenting issue, right? And maybe not just one parent, maybe both parents, but for some reason they just decided to pin that straight on there. They're looking at how your children behave in school, right? And how they interact with other children. And if your children are misbehaving and throwing objects at school and hurting other children, you're going to lose access to your children because one parent can just blame the other parent, and it is no good. As a man, you got to think about the behavior of your children before you start to go down the road of child arrangements orders and trying to get back access to your children. You got to make sure that your ducks are lined up in a row, because any bad behavior that those children exhibit is just going to be blamed on you as the dad. Any bad behavior that them children exhibit. So let me just come back to the document there. So that was number 5, right? So the first thing they start to detail is that my son is bad in school. He's throwing objects in class and he's not taking responsibility for his actions, trying to make him out like he's some wild youth. And then it says son 1, I believe that is most of the document is detailed on my main son, who was 6 or 7 at the time, and my other little son was like 18 months, 2 years at the time. So it doesn't really focus on my second son. Most of the time it refers to my first son, son 1. So son 1 is displaying negative behaviors. So looking at number 6 now. So number 6 I'm pointing to over there, which I think I can see. Number 6 under education, it says son 1 is displaying negative behaviors at school which have resulted in him receiving several internal and external exclusions. Son 1 is extremely disrespectful to staff. Son 1 has thrown furniture and other objects at staff and other children at school and hurt them, but does not take responsibilities for his actions. Now, at this point, I was not aware that my son was being excluded from school, because when we split up, the school were communicating with one parent only with a separated parents policy. I'm going to do another video on the sheggery that the school did with the separated parents policy. I might even do that on the next video, actually. Yeah, maybe next 2 or 3 videos you're going to start to see how I get into the school. But this report here is what really lost me contact with my children. Now, it said that son was being internally and externally excluded, but the school were not communicating that with me. And I saw my son on and off during this period for a little while, on and off, and he wasn't telling me. Him being 6, he gets sent home from school, he's not going to tell his dad, but the school weren't telling dad and mum wasn't telling dad. So this is the first time that I saw that my son was being internally excluded. Now, when he was living with me, when we were living together up to the time he was like 6, he never got sent home from school, not even got a letter from school. Small little behaviors that he would exhibit as a 4, 5 and 6-year-old were minor, but he never got internally excluded, externally excluded. But when the breakup has kicked in now, he's moved away, he's with his mum and he's not with his dad, all of a sudden he's getting internally and externally excluded. I don't even know what the difference is between internal and external exclusion, but I know it ain't good. And this is what you got to start to watch, but this is only happening after the split up. So that was number 6, right? Coming down to box number 7, I'm pointing over here. That looks like I'm right. Box number 7. Children, it's a title. Children who need help, social, emotional well-being, children at risk. That's the title, right, of the box number 4. Could do with some better presentation. So box number 7, but item number 4 on the list. I think that details son 1 and son 2. This is the key. This is the betrayal triangle coming up here now, right? This is where, as a man, your ship gets sunken by statutory authorities. So this is very important. Section 7 of this document. Very, very important. Why I lost access to my children for a year and a half. Son 1 and Son 2. This is box number 7, just here. Right? Son 1 and Son 2 have experienced domestic violence from birth in the form of emotional and psychological abuse of their mother from their father. This is having a negative effect on Son 1's behavior at school. So this is where they try to sink your ship now. They've said my children have also been domestically abused, not because I've abused them directly. No, they're not accusing me of that. They're saying I've abused my children by proxy. So the children have witnessed domestic violence of their mother, so therefore I have been domestically abusing my children. Now, you can't win that one, yeah? So it's like, you domestically abuse the children, you can't see them. You domestically abuse the mother, you're still domestically abusing the children, you still can't see the children. You're in the betrayal triangle right here. There's nothing that you can do to get out of that, so you can't argue either way, right? But don't worry. Don't worry. When I was reading this, I was hurt. When I was reading this, I was hurt because I was like, I've not abused their mother, but you know, in this day and age, domestic abuse seems to be some kind of airy, fairy, flow with the wind kind of. He calls me fat. He says, I need to go to the gym. So that means that you're domestically abusing a woman. It's really thin, flim flam, politically correct rubbish. But say no more. Move on to box number 8 here, right? Now it says separate to this, I think that's my name. My name's behavior in dad. I think that's dad's behavior in front of the children. Now, this is where, I need to take a sip of water. This is where I got cut deep. Not only do you have the breakup of your family, but this is where I experienced betrayal from close family members. Now, remember, I tell you that my channel is all about teaching men how to become more deadly and more dangerous. To become more deadly and more dangerous, to become a success and to live a successful life and a happy and fruitful life with your friends and your family around you. But some of your friends and your family are envious of you. Forget about jealousy. Jealousy is lightweight. I've done a video on jealousy versus envy. I'm going to try to link to it in the cards if I can set up this YouTube video properly. But jealousy and envy, but some of your family are envious of you. And some of your family, even with the statutory authorities, can still help to break your relationship down. Now, this family member I found out was my cousin, right? But she was like my sister. Me and her grew like this. We grew like hand in glove. We grew like this, like brother and sister. This was like my sister. I considered her to be, I love her like my sister. And this woman betrayed me by going behind my back and helping my ex to drive a wedge between my children and myself, right? Helping to drive that wedge between my family. And what you have to understand is when women are in that emotional place, it's like the negativity attracts more negativity and people see a way in to break down your family. It's very, very dangerous when they see a way to break down your family and they see a way that they can satisfy the green-eyed monster of envy in their own heart by helping someone else to break up what you love the most, which is your family. So this said, separate to dad's behavior, box number 8, in front of the children, family members have said that father, I think that's me, I think that says father behind there, uses inappropriate language in front of the children and has reported conversation he has had with his father and grandfather, so that I think that was my son, that are both inappropriate for a child of his age and are pernicious. I don't even know what the word pernicious means. Contain untrue information has caused him anxious behavior, so that was my son. So you got to understand, family members will also chime in who envy your clout and still try to bring you down. And these social workers will seek out those family members that have negative views of you. They do not have a balance in their report. I'm gonna deal with the balance of the report afterwards. But they don't seek out family members that have positive affirmations of you. They're only just seeking out ways to break up a black family. You gotta understand the modus operandi of these social workers, of the system, how they wanna break down black families. look at section 9. I'm going to get my point in up on point. Section 9. It says this: according to a MARRAC referral, London Borough of Croydon made by the independent domestic violence advocate, I was escorted off the school property. So now I'm going to get something now, yeah? And look at this. It says, Mum, Pam informed the police of this incident on 101 and raised a Merlin report. That's how the social worker got this information from MARRAC. Now, let me just flip over to here about MARRAC, yeah? What is MARRAC? MARRAC is a multi-agency risk assessment conference, right? And MARRAC is an agency that deals with high-risk domestic violence cases, high risk. So it involves social services, children's services, adult services, the police, homicide units, gang violence units, all kind of fire brigade, charities, domestic violence advocates. It's a multi-agency risk assessment conference. It's got all the statutory services around the table, and all they're trying to do is determine how they can protect a victim from domestic violence. And this is a good thing, right? But you've got to understand, for there to be a victim of domestic violence, the system needs a perpetrator. And for there to be a victim or a perceived victim, there has to be a perceived perpetrator. And that was me. And that's going to be you. That's going to be you as a black man. That's going to be you as a man in this day and age. Forget about the black. You as a man are going to be the perpetrator. There has to be two sides of the fence, two sides of the yoke. There's got to be yin and yang. If there's a victim for MARRAC to sit around the table and discuss, they must be discussing a perpetrator. And that means that you're convicted. You're guilty before you're even innocent. Before you're even innocent, you're a perpetrator of domestic violence. And that's what you have to understand when you're in these systems here, yeah? So I didn't even know that homegirl was being referred to MARRAC, was making police reports behind my back. I knew none of this when I walked into my first court hearing and lost contact with my children. She was stitching me up with all of the statutory authorities, but they were helping her to do it. They were pushing her to do it. They were making all of these referrals, and never once was any statutory authority saying, listen, we need to sit you down and help to keep you black families together. We know that when your sons as black boys grow up without a black father, the chances are more propensely that they're going to be handbag snatchers on road, snatching people's handbag and their iPhones out of their pocket, turning to crime and drugs because they don't have the influence of a black father, which is what they need to grow up in South London. So keep on going into the report, sliding down section 10, where it says family members say that recently, I think that son one has been extremely disrespectful to them, which he has never been before. So family are saying that the answers to, the proof is in the pudding. After the breakup, my son is being extremely disrespectful to family members, but before the breakup, it says he has never been before, and but it's right there in the answer. Like, my son is being extremely disrespectful to family members when he's not seeing his dad, when he's not dealing with his dad, when he's not getting to see his dad, when he probably hears Pam and her cohorts them discussing bad things about his dad. This is what happens, right? So he's never been disrespectful to them before. But look, then it says here in number 10, family members believe this is because I think son is copying his father's example, being disrespectful to family members. So my son's not seeing me at this time, but he's copying me and being disrespectful to family members. But he was never disrespectful to family members all the time he was living with me from 0 to 6 years old. He was never disrespectful to family members. But clearly they don't kind of see where they're going with this. But they keep going through. I'm just picking out the pieces so I don't bore you lot. Going into section 11, I'll try to read this. As I said, I've redacted it and taken out all of the children's names. I think here in the middle of section 11, just here, something said that despite their contact, I think that's Pam said that despite their contact arrangement, I think that's dad, refused to hand the children back to her when they were due to return to her after their Wednesday sleepover. I think that's mother is concerned that father will pick the children up from school one day and abduct them and either take them to Jamaica, as he has threatened to her he will do so, or to just disappear with them. Excuse my French. Just reading it is annoying. Look at this. I think this says mother said that father once took her on the children, I think that should say, and the children, on a holiday to Jamaica, and then just left them there as she had no money to return home. So you got to understand, they're painting the picture of you as being a monster, that I'm gonna take my children and mother on a holiday to Jamaica, 9,000 miles away, and I'm gonna leave them there with no money to return home. I'd have to be a wicked MF if I'm gonna do something like that. A wicked MF. But when I read stuff like that, my heart is just sinking. Heart is just sinking. Heart is just sinking. As a man, your heart is just sinking. It says that I refuse claims of domestic abuse, and I claim that mother had some kind of depression for a long time in the relationship. That's what they're saying I said, even though I had no input in this at all. In number 12 section there, it says that I'm gonna attempt to gaslight mother and mislabel her thinking about how the relationship ended. And number 13, look at this. Mother is a social worker in the children and disabilities at a local authority. Wait. I paid for mother to go to university, supported her to go to university, supported her to have a career, to have a professional career. And as soon as she qualified and done her, what do you call it? Like do some kind of assessment, you do some kind of training, on-the-job training. As soon as she finished her on-the-job training after 1 year, she packed up the relationship, left, took her professional qualification and used her links in the social work authority to strike me down. Never again. I ain't paying for no woman to go university ever again, star. Because this is what happens. They use it all against you. And just look at this key part underneath number 13. It says here, the family have no debts or financial problems. Look at that. Big man. Big man, look how I look after my family. So at the time that we broke up, family had no debts or financial problems. Lived in house, went on holidays, had good job, had good career. Mother just qualified for a professional qualification, had savings in the bank. We were living together with 2 black children in a nice, tight black family. There it says there, we had no debts or financial problems. That's dad's job. That's the father's job. The father's job is to make sure that the family got no debts or financial problems. That's my job. Yeah? That's my job done. Big tick in the box there. But it come like it's not enough for some people. Right? Come like it's not enough. Now look at this, coming back to some more betrayal. The document's not ended. Section 14, just there. His father's cousin and school have said there are concerns about father's parenting and questions about his ability to put his children's needs first on occasion. So I provide for the family, make sure that the family have no financial debts. Look, it just says that here, you know. There, section 13, the family have no debts or financial problems. But down here at section 14, my family have concerns about my parenting and my ability to put my children's needs first. So if I make sure my family have no debts or no financial concerns, how am I not putting my children first? But this is when you get the little jealous family members. Jealous that my unit had no financial problems, had no debts, had no concerns, and they're jealous and envious over it. And that green-eyed monster of envy makes them come and chat to these people behind your back to sink your ship and drive a wedge between you and your family. It keeps going. Section 15, it says the children continuing to be exposed to domestic abuse, the children being subjected to emotional abuse by their father. So everything is just slapping dad. The children are being victims of domestic abuse and victims of emotional abuse by their father. And then it says mum is seeking a child arrangements order, prohibitive steps order, thinking that I'm going to abduct the children and just give up my life like I come from Ethiopia or somewhere. I'm just going to go and take them to some country that has no Geneva Convention, yeah, and all them kind of things. Mum has a non-molestation order in place. I've told you already how the non-molestation order tied me up in knots later on. Dad needs to adhere to the non-molestation order, and dad needs to refrain from emotionally abusive behavior with, I don't know if that's son or mum. So what you have to understand is that these are the documents that people use to mash up your family life. This is the rubbish that social services put out there, that Lambeth social services, 11 pages of documentation that I had no involvement in. It's all allegation, but it's stated as if it was fact. That's what you have to understand. So it basically says the children here in section 15, the children continuing to be exposed to domestic abuse. That means there has to be a perpetrator of domestic abuse, which has to be me. The children being subjected to emotional abuse by their father. and the antisocial behavior at school becoming worse. So they're attributing my son's antisocial behavior based on the domestic abuse that I was alleged to be giving him. Let me tell you something. I'm an intelligent black man. I'm a man, then I'm black, then I'm intelligent. I think it goes in that order. Man, black, intelligent, but we say intelligent black man. I wasn't gonna stand for this. I had to defend myself now. This is why I say this was war. This was war against the system. This was war against the system. This was David versus Goliath. This is when I realized that I had MARRAC, the multi-agency referral assessment something against me, right? That was every statutory agency that a woman can draw in was against me. Lambeth Social Services were against me. At that time, the courts were against me. The handbag magistrate was against me. Cashapp was against me. Mum was against me. My own trusted family members, like brother and sister, were against me. Every angle of people was against me. Every angle. I found one good solicitor that helped me. One good solicitor. She helped me. She got my mind on the right track. And I had a next man really help me. He really began to help me. Helped me to set out a framework of strategy to attack back these people, to defend myself. Because I had to defend myself against all these allegations. Perpetrator of domestic abuse against my children. I was not having it. So, in the next episode, I hope I'm gonna talk to you about how I began to pull the thread to undermine all of this BS that they put there and what Lambeth Council put there, why I lost contact with my children. So, stay tuned to the next episode and I'll catch you on the next one. I think this one was a little bit long, maybe 22, 23 minutes. Until the next one, lick 'em all.